Hi everyone, and welcome back to another lecture in rapid review. Today we are discussing chapter 17. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about the two parts. Actually, this presentation will consist of two parts. The first part deals with the uses of ing form, and the second part deals with the passive voice. Starting with the ing forms as verbs. All of you know that the ing form is usually used in the present participle and with the auxiliary verb be. For example, when you're talking about a continuous action, you would say, I'm reading a book, I'm sleeping. You have the auxiliary be alongside the ing, the verb in the ing form. This is the first usage. You need to also to keep in your mind that although that this ing form is the verb in the sentence, but it cannot stand alone. It has to include the auxiliary alongside this verb. Okay, the second usage of the ing form, which is mostly when you change a verb into a noun, and this noun is usually called a gerund. Let me just start using the highlighter so I would indicate the important parts. So yeah, when you add ing form to ing to the verb, you are changing it into a noun, and this noun is usually called gerund. Okay, and some ing forms are used as nouns. So you see that mostly these nouns are usually uncountable, but in some cases there is a possibility of adding the s plural to some of them. Yani, like I said, they are verbs. You add ing form to them. Some of them, or the majority of them, are uncountable, but in some cases you can add the plural s. These nouns, which are, or these gerunds, let's say, they can occupy different positions, and these positions are actually noun positions. So, and these noun positions occupied by the noun can be either the subject, sorry for that interruption. For example, as if you are saying singing is a beautiful activity, you can see that singing, the gerund noun, occupies the subject position. How do we know? Because it comes before the main verb is. Is here is not an auxiliary, it's a main verb. The other case is when it is in the object position. I like living by the ocean. Again, how do we know that this is the object position? Because it follows the verb. The main verb here is like, and it is following this main verb. The next position, it can come in the complement of verbs. We enjoyed going on that trip. So we enjoyed going on that trip. So what did we enjoy? We enjoyed going on that trip. Right. The other one is when it is the object of a preposition. Remember when we say that when a word is preceded by a preposition, then it is the object of that preposition. He is terribly afraid of selling his house. Selling is the object that follows the preposition, and this object is in the ing form. Right. ing form phrases. What do we mean by ing form phrases? Remember when we were talking about infinitive phrase, when the ing form comes in the form of a phrase, يعني it is preceded by a subject and it has a complement and it occupies, even though, remember I've just said in the previous slide that it occupies a position in the sentence. That can be a subject position or object position, but it's not only ing form alone. However, it comes in a form of a phrase. When the ing form comes in a phrase, the first case is when the subject of the ing form is a possessive. يعني هسه this is the ing form. It is the ing phrase that occupies the subject position. If we look at this phrase, it has Sally losing the pen. This is the subject position and it comes in a phrase. This phrase has its main, its subject of the phrase is Sally. It is said that when the subject is in the possessive form, okay, the ing form comes in the sort or in the form of a phrase. So because the subject of the ing form or ing phrase is in the possessive form, so it came in a phrase. Sally's losing the pen. This is all the subject. Prevented is the verb, and then the complement her during the exam. The other case when we have the ing form in the form of a phrase or the ing verb in the form of a phrase, and it doesn't come alone, is when the main verb is the perception verbs. So you see that I noticed, this is I is the subject, notice is the verb, and the complement, we notice that the complement is my mom cleaning the room. So because the verb is in the perception, is a perception verb, we have the ing form coming in a phrase. It says also, for example, I'm writing this sentence twice because I want to show you that the subject of the ing form, اللي هو my mom, it is the subject of the ing form. Okay, if you want to substitute, let me just erase this. If you want to substitute this subject of the ing phrase with a pronoun, this subject will come in the object form. يعني I noticed her cleaning the room. Okay, and this, remember we studied this in the infinitive phrase as well. It's not she, even though it occupies a subject position for the ing phrase, but it comes in the object form. Right. Moving now to the verbs that take ing form. Here we have two types of verbs. As some of them take the object in the ing form, whereas others, the object that follows these verbs can either in the infinitive, okay, or the ing form. For example, we have admit. I admit losing my gold ring. I keep ringing her. I appreciate helping me. So these verbs, this list of verbs are followed by an object which is in the ing form, and the other list, for example, she continues to bother her brother. She continues bothering her brother. So yeah, it comes in two occasions, either followed by ing alone or a verb with to in the infinitive form. In the next case, we have perception verbs. These perception verbs, their examples of perception verbs are notice, observe, see, watch, hear, smell, and feel. And their object can either be simple, لاحظوا the difference from the other list of verbs. The object can either in the infinitive or ing, but with the perception verbs, the object that follows them can either be in the simple form or in the ing form. Example, we saw her watching TV. We saw her watch TV. Okay, so what's the difference between using the object in the ing form and using the object in the simple form? I'm writing here this is in the pink font color. The ing form emphasizes duration. يعني I saw her watching TV, that she continues watching TV. And in the other case, it suggests the completion of the action, which I saw her watch TV. She finished watching TV, probably. Okay? All right. The next case is when we have the two verbs forget and remember. Okay? These two verbs can be followed by either the ing form or infinitive. However, there is difference in meaning. What's that difference? This is difference in time relationship, which means that when the ing form object, when it has, forget or remembers, has an ing form object, this expresses the actions and situation that happen before the main verb. For example, he forgets taking the notes. He remembers sending email. My main verb is forget, and my main verb is remembers. Okay, and it expresses, like we are saying, an action that happened before the main verb. So when you say he remembers sending email or he forgets taking the notes, it shows that the idea of remembering or the idea of forgetting happened before, sending the email happened before remembering it. Or taking the notes happened before the main verb, which is forgets. If we have object in the infinitive form, this expresses the actions and situations that happened either after the main verb. Okay, in this case لاحظوا إنه it is after the main verb, or it doesn't happen at all. طبعا in the first case, when it comes after the main verb is with the verb remember, and when it doesn't happen at all is with the verb forget. Example, he forget to keep it. So he forgot keeping it, so the action didn't happen. Alright, and the other one, he remembered to make an appointment. So the action happened after to the main verb. So in this slide, we are talking about the ing form when they come as noun modifiers. Noun modifiers, remember when we were talking about the adjectives and when they are describing the noun. So usually the ing form are in general adjectives, just like adjectives. So, and they, in most cases, they occupy the same positions as adjectives. Here we can see in this pyramid that they come before the noun that they modify, which means that they precede the noun. For example, teaching assistants. Okay? Or they can come after the verb be. Getting tired is upsetting. Okay? And the other case is after the noun that they modify when we say, I find the movie interesting. So yeah, these are the positions that are usually occupied by the adjective, and it is modifying the noun. So meaning of ing modifiers. Ing form modifiers. Although the ing form are used as adjectives, however, to distinguish them as noun modifiers from ing form as past participle modifier, there are two frequent uses. Let's see. First of all, the first case is to describe the effect of one person or situation on another. يعني شنو? An interesting person. This person who interests you or has an effect on that or on somebody else we use the ing form. And the other one, boring lecture, a lecture that makes you bored, or a lecture which bores you. So this is the other meaning of the first meaning of the ing form as modifier. The other case or the other meaning is when it indicates that the action is in a process. Notice here, a growing boy, a boy who is in the process of growing, يعني that boy is still growing. Whereas if you say a grown boy, a boy which has already grown up. يعني here we are differentiating between noun modifiers in the form of ing form or past participle modifier. By the way, we'll see this in the last slide of this presentation. When you see boiling water, it means that this water is still in the process of boiling. Or if you say boiled water, water that has already finished boiling. ing form in time phrase. Usually time words that come before the ing form. We have before, after, until, since. These are very useful when you are creating sentences. For example, we brush our teeth before sleeping. After, for example, watching TV, for instance, we do our homework, okay? And when you are saying don't eat while watching TV, so yeah, these are the expressions that will be very useful when you are using the time words. All of you know that the ing form can come after prepositions. By the way, we are accepting with the exception of to, the preposition to. To is always followed by the verb in the simple form, whereas the other prepositions are usually followed by the ing form. For example, and now we have the preposition at. I'm not good at learning new things, so we have the preposition at followed by the verb learning in ing form. And they are interested in buying. Thanks very much for inviting me. How about meeting for dinner? I mean, for dinner tonight, yeah? Or they must be fed up with cleaning her house. What are the advantages of studying English? Instead of, by the way, this has of, the same of the previous sentence. That's why it is in the ing form as well. Okay, and we got into the exhibition without having the cue. And the next one is despite. Despite here comes as a preposition, despite playing very well, so they lost the game. And the last one is for. Did you get into trouble for being late? So yeah, for is followed by ing form as well. Now we are moving to the second part of our lecture, which is the passive voice. All of you know that we use the passive voice and the active voice. The performer of the action comes before the verb. يعني Ali cleans the room, for instance. However, in the passive voice, the performer of the action is either deleted, unknown, or it comes in a preposition phrase at the end of the sentence. For example, let's look at the following two examples. Teaching assistant assigned readings. Readings are assigned by teaching assistant. So the teaching assistant is the subject. It comes at the final position, and the object comes at the initial position. Readings is the object, and here we bring it to the initial position to be the subject of the passive sentence, And remember, we have the auxiliary verb be in different forms, of course, according to the tense of the sentence. And then it is followed by the past participle of the verb. If you want to mention the performer of the action, we put a preposition phrase by, followed by the subject. If your sentence has more than one auxiliary, for instance, children have to be supervised. Here, if you have another auxiliary, this auxiliary usually precedes the verb be. Okay. When do I use the passive voice? Usually, the passive voice is used when we don't know the performer of the action. The window is broken. Who broke the window? We don't know. We just noticed that our window is broken. So therefore, we use the passive voice. Sometimes, when it is preferable not to mention the performer, sometimes when it gives you a rumor, I have been told that you cheated in the exam. I don't want to mention who told me that my daughter or my son cheated in the exam. Therefore, I don't want to mention who is the doer of the action, and I use the passive voice. For example, I was given some bad advice. Who gave me the bad advice? I don't want to tell. Okay, I just want to say I want to hide that information from the hearer. When we want to emphasize the active object, quizzes are given regularly. For instance, the teacher gives quizzes regularly. I want to focus on quizzes. When I say the teacher gives projects or quizzes regularly, I want to focus on the word quizzes. That's why I make it in the passive voice. I place it at the initial position, followed by the verb to be and the verb in the past participle form. Okay, the last case is in the literary works. Sometimes the resultant work or the literary work is as important or more important than the performer of the action. The performer, as we said, is the subject. Sometimes when that literary work, for instance, the name of song, the name of drama, the name of a play, or the name of a novel, it's more important when I want to focus on that novel more than the performer of that or the writer of that novel. I will place it at the initial position before the performer. Romeo and Juliet are written by Shakespeare. Usually we say Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, but because when the resultant work is as important or more important than the performer of the action, therefore we are using the passive voice. So these are the cases when we use the passive voice. Now we have another case. There is a construction or the structure which is somehow similar to the passive voice. They call it passive-like causatives. What are the passive voice causatives? If we look at the following sentence, I have my children clean the room. Alright, it means I make my children clean the room. This is what it means. It consists of have, okay, and then the object, and then the past participle of the verb. I would say this is the original sentence. I have my children clean the room. I make my children clean the room. So I want to change it to causative form. I have the room cleaned. We delete the word children and we use only the subject with have and the object alongside the verb in the ed form or in the past participle. Okay, here we have an explanation. The causatives have, and we are omitting the performer of the action. Who is the performer? The children, because it's the children who clean the room. and then we put the verb in the past participle. Why do we call them passive-like? They are not passive, by the way. Why? Because they don't have the auxiliary be. If you look at these two pictures, we have those people. They paint the room. They are the doer of the action of painting. They couldn't do it. They didn't manage cleaning or painting the room. So what did they do? They hired somebody to paint the room. So we don't want to mention the cleaner. We want to make him to be mysterious, for instance. We don't want it to be identified. So they have the room painted. Okay? So they brought somebody, which means that they make somebody paint the room. And you see that they consist of the subject plus have and the object, finally the verb in the past participle form. The last one is, or the last slide that we are talking about today, is when we have the past participle as a modifier. Okay, we have two cases. Past participle can be noun modifier, for example, just like with the ing form when it comes as a noun modifier. Here, past participle is a noun modifier, but this is slightly different because it indicates that the action is completed, or sometimes, for example, quizzes or quiz sections are supervised by assistants. Here it modifies the nouns. We say supervised quiz sections. Okay, or in other case, quiz sections that are supervised. You just modify the noun, quiz sections, and you place the verb in the past participle form before the noun it modifies. In the second case, when we use the past participle as a modifier, remember shortly we were saying that sometimes when the ing form comes before the noun, it indicates that the action is still in duration. It hasn't finished yet. Whereas when we have the ed, or the past participle, coming before the noun, it indicates that the action has already been completed. So let's look at the following two examples. Boiled water is in the fridge, which means that the water has already been boiled and we placed it in the fridge to cool down. Or when we say boiling water is on the stove, it shows that the water which is still boiling and it's still on the stove. Now we reach the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for your listening, and I hope that you find this lecture useful.